Struggling with addiction of any kind and feeling trapped? Discover how getting to the root of the problem can unlock real healing in today's episode with Lillian Smith.
Why are you stuck in that? What happened that caused you to really believe that there aren't other choices available to you?
Ready to reclaim your connection after trauma? I can help. I'm Amber McCrea, therapeutic nutritionist and host of this podcast. Find my link in the episode description and book your free consultation now. In a world where addiction is often seen as a primary struggle, what if we told you there's a different way? One that views addiction not as the core issue, but as a symptom of deeper underlying challenges. Today, we're going to discuss root cause and how that affects our addictions and healing. You're listening to Connection Over Perfection, the podcast where healing begins. I'm your host, Amber McCrea, and I'm thrilled to introduce to you the lovely guest, Lillian Smith. Lillian's journey is not just a story of personal triumph over addiction. It's a testament to the power, resilience, compassion, and the unwavering pursuit to help others. Join us as we check out the transformative vision of Aruka Ranch, a sanctuary where individuals are not only encouraged to heal, but are empowered to reclaim their lives and rewrite their stories. Through Lillian's profound insights and the groundbreaking work of Aruka Ranch, they will challenge conventional narratives surrounding addiction, recovery, and explore a holistic path to freedom and fulfillment. All right, so amazing souls, buckle up and get ready for a journey of self-discovery, healing, and connection. Today, we're not just discussing addiction, we're sparking a revolution of hope and transformation. Welcome to Connection Over Perfection, where the journey of surviving to thriving begins. Welcome, Lillian.
Thank you for having me. And I love that. Thriving, not surviving.
Right? In a world where I think that, I don't really know many people that are not in fight or flight. I don't know many people that are not living in that. And I think that, that kind of just jumps us into one of the root causes, right?
Yeah. And I've also learned there's an added one to that. So fight, flight, or freeze.
And then there's fawn.
Oh, that too. Right. Yeah. So a lot of people get stuck in all of that. And unfortunately, what drives addiction is a lot of what you're talking about there. Even the fight or flight, the freezing, all of those have become just mechanisms for people to try to survive instead of thrive. Let me just get through. And my passion is to see people get to a place where they're enjoying their life. They're actually having freedom in their life. It's interesting. I was talking to one of my clients just the other day about the definition of freedom. A lot of times you hear that word and you think, well, okay, so that means I'm free to do whatever I want to do. Well, if you're working with addicts or people that have trauma that have been just trying to mask that trauma and get through another day, when you talk to them about freedom, the definition is really, I'm free to not do what I've always done. I'm free to begin to look at other ideas, other choices that are available to me that I didn't know existed. So that's part of the root cause recovery that we're looking to provide for people because, all right, why are you stuck in that? Why, what happened that caused you to really believe that there aren't other choices available to you? And some of that's family of origin, that's our experiences. Some of it's even physiological, like you and I were chatting about a little while ago. There's all these different components that we have got to look at. And it's so important to look at the whole person. So body, soul, spirit. And I say the soul because I think the soul makes up, our thinking, our mind, and also our emotions. So there are a lot of people out there that don't even tend to their emotions. They'll look at their thought life somewhat. They realize, okay, I'm probably believing some lies here. I've got some false beliefs because of some things that have happened to me. So they'll focus on that a bit. but they don't realize that their emotions are critical. Their emotions are very important and they serve a purpose. So I kind of look at it as like the gauges on your vehicle or those old dummy lights that used to come on when there was a problem, right? So emotions, you can look at them as being that too. Like, okay, everything's going off like this.
Alert,
So
alert.
alert, alert, alert. And I remember reading a book one time. It's called The Lies We Believe. And the author was talking about that example. And he said, what we typically do is basically we take this imaginary hammer out and we just basically, smack it and just shatter it. It's like, okay, that just needs to go away. I don't want to look at that. And the reality is we need to look at it. You need to
To
feel what they're
understand
feeling.
it.
Yes, embrace it. And once
Because
you
it has a
get,
purpose.
it
It's
has a
there for a
purpose.
reason.
Right. So if it's a warning light, that should tell us, okay, where's this anger coming from? Let's use anger as the example.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So something happened. But when I look at what transpired, I realize that internally I'm giving this situation $500 worth of emotion. It should have been $5.
Mm-hmm.
So again, root issues. There's something deeper going on. So the emotional part, like the soul part that I'm talking about, the mind and emotions, we have to help individuals to identify what they're feeling, why they're feeling that way. Is it possible that they're giving $500 and it should be 5? And if they are, why?
Yeah.
Where's that coming from? Let's go deeper. We have to go deeper, deeper, deeper. That's where people are going to
That's
find
huge.
freedom. And the freedom to not do what they've always done, because there are choices available to them today and we can provide that. We can help them. I know there were people that came into my life as part of my recovery that helped me to see, no, not everybody does like this way, this way, this way, like you're doing it. Not every family lives and interacts like your family did. And the reality is, most addicts come from an environment where it's very, you keep the secrets, and we are as sick as our secrets, right? And if you're going to keep secrets,
Keep it in the family. We don't talk about it.
yeah. So if you keep the secrets, then you have no idea what's going on in somebody else's life either, because it's never talked about from the time you're just little all the way up until you're older and you're out in the workforce. Even you just don't talk about it.
Right. And that's huge. There's so much in that. I'm over here scribbling notes to come back to. um that's a huge one. We don't talk about it. And I just want to highlight that, but we can come back to that because I know that's huge. We don't talk about it and it's still, even after we've done so much work and so many generational curses have been broken, that's still so prevalent today. We don't talk about it. But you mentioned that feeling and of the lack of freedom, right? Because we don't talk about it. This is all I know. And I just get this overwhelming sense of feeling stuck, no other options. And I know so many of my listeners, because I was there, I felt stuck, very stuck. And so what I'm hearing is that once we can break free from that, hey, there are other options, a little light at the end of the tunnel kind of comes open and we're like, okay, maybe there is a different way. And that's really what you are providing and Aruka Ranch, right? And so before we go too far, can you just tell us a little bit more about what Aruka Ranch is, where the name comes from, and what it's all about?
Okay, so it was interesting because we already had the vision of creating a space for people to come that was going to be a place where they could not have any distractions, do a holistic approach to helping people, whether they're dealing with unresolved trauma or addiction. And we didn't really have a name for it. And my daughter and I were basically driving down the road one day, and we're just kind of talking about the vision again and getting excited about it because we know that this is going to work because we're already doing parts of this already in people's lives. It's just going to bring everything in one place. And so I told her, I said, I want you to look up a couple of words. And then she was just looking at Hebrew words. So it comes from, that's a Hebrew word, Aruka. And she said, you're going to love this. She said, Aruka means coming into wholeness, body, soul, spirit. And it's a place of new beginnings. That's really it. And coming into wholeness. And so people that come to Aruka Ranch are going to be given an opportunity to focus on their physical well-being, everything from nutrition to, some other alternative modalities that we know are out there that work for people. And we've been actually sending people to professionals that are doing some of these things, working alongside us. So that piece, and then, like we said, the soul, the mind, and the emotions, and then the spirit, just really having them come. They could come and they can stay for 3 months, they could stay for 6 months, they could stay for a full year, depending on, the extent of what their needs are and what they're bringing, and what they need. So it's been something that we have been moving towards for many, many years because it's funny because my husband and I both, a lot of the things that we do today they were born out of frustration.
Mm.
So we see certain things and it's like, that's not working. And I think that we could do something different and that would work. And so, we've basically evolved to this point where we've come to realize, you can counsel people, help them with mind renewal, and that's all good. You're helping them with their emotional stuff. But if they're eating horribly and their body's not getting what it needs, they're not exercising, they're not in the sun to get vitamin D, which actually
Yeah.
helps people to get, relief from depression and anxiety. There's so many things. And it's like, this is so frustrating. Now, if we can do this, this, and this, and provide that for people, we're going to see success. And we're seeing it.
I love a few things that you said. One is that you and your husband saw what wasn't working. And I think that's so huge in this journey. I know that when I was learning and when I was lost, I had to try a lot of things and they didn't work until I found what is working. And I think that that just offers some hope that you guys still experience it. Of course, I do. I call it failing forward because we have to try a lot of things to figure out what works for us. And I love the approach. I am all about it because that is exactly what I do. From a nutritional side and emotional side and the spiritual side, that whole body healing. And one of the other things that I really love about what you're doing in Aruka Ranch is providing this container for people that's safe. It provides lots of different opportunities to heal on different aspects. So what you do to one part of your body affects the rest. So if you are eating nutritious and giving your body the nutrients it needs, those mitochondrial nutrients to create the energy to provide your body the healing that you are asking it to do, you're helping, you're assisting. And that's a huge portion, I think, of, like you said, what's missing in a lot of people's journey in healing. You can get so far with journaling, you can get so far with therapy, you can get so far, and all of these things are really good and they're all really essential. It will only get you so far because on the scientific level, our anatomy, our physiology is affected by trauma, by our emotions. And so it works both ways. Our emotions also and trauma dictate how our body processes. And so if we've gone through trauma, our body says, okay, let's go into fight or flight. And if we do not know how to get out of that through different modalities, we create a very acidic pH within our body. And that hinders us from being able to create new neural pathways, to create new ways of doing things, new habits. And I think that a lot of people get stuck. And when they try to create new habits, getting out of addiction or any of that, they try and try and try. And they're like, it's not working. And I think part of it is because we're not giving our bodies what it needs to be able to do that.
Right. Right. And I believe everything that you just said, if those things are not getting taken care of simultaneous to the other work that the person is doing, it always leads to a relapse and another relapse or switching addictions. That's what happens because
That's huge.
those neural pathways, I mean, it's huge. And we see, okay, the medical model right now, let's say someone is a drug addict or an alcoholic. They go into detox, they go into rehab. What do? They try to help with the neural pathways, but how do they do it? They do it with pharmaceuticals. Not that I'm totally anti-medicine, but I'm always about let's take the more natural approach first and see where we can get with someone before we start giving them medications. Let's help them change their diet. Let's put them on supplements. Let's use some things that are going to help their brain. And you mentioned pH. If your pH is out of whack, you're going to have inflammation. And where is that going to happen? It happens in the fat cells typically, because that's where the toxins reside. They just all accumulate. So your brain is fat cells. So where's all that inflammation? In the brain. So you have all this brain fog. You can't think. And then I think a lot of addicts, they struggle with impulsivity. So they don't think through things. Well, no wonder your brain is inflamed. It's not functioning
Right.
the way that God designed it to function. And I
Right.
believe that God created our bodies in such a way, they are miraculous, fearfully and wonderfully made. If we give our bodies what it needs and we begin to correct the things that have been damaged, it will heal. It's just going to take some time while we're doing these other things, helping people realize choices, helping them manage their emotions, change their thinking, right? So this is
Yeah.
huge. So the statistics are alarming and the death rate is increasing. Here in South Florida, we moved here almost 6 years ago. And when we first moved here, they said that statistically, it had increased. The deaths from just drug-related overdoses had increased over 500% over the last few years. And you're talking 6 years ago. And I know that that's even more now. That's disturbing to me. So a lot of people are dying. They're not committing suicide. It's unintentional overdose that's happening. And if we can begin to do relapse prevention in a better way than what we're doing it right now, we can save people's lives. I mean, I think on our website, we indicated that some of the research was like 60%. Well, one of the conferences I went to just this past year, they said it's more like 80% of the people that go into detox relapse over and over and over again. And wow, I think we can change that. I really do.
First of all, that, you know, we talk about pandemics and we talk about cancer and we talk about diabetes and these things. They're serious. But are we looking at this? Are we looking at being disconnected? To me, that's the biggest pandemic, being disconnected from our bodies, from ourselves, from others. If you look back in the last few years, and where the society is going and disconnecting from each other, right? With electronics, our food. I mean, we could talk about that for hours and what that's physically doing emotionally, mentally to our bodies. And you're adding all of this in, and then you're adding in guilt and shame and the view of self. I would say, from my personal experience, being I am addicted to perfectionism, and I'm a workaholic, and those things, they look prettier. They look prettier to people, but they're the
Mhm.
same. I remember sitting in with my counselor, and we were talking about my ex-husband and his wife, who was now addicted to drugs. And she looked at me and she said, Amber, you and her are in the same recovery seat. Yours just looks prettier.
Yes.
And that hit hard, right?
Ouch. Yeah.
Worse. Yeah. And she had a point, is that it is affecting my body the same, right? And I think also it helped me remove that judgment.
Yeah. Boy, I'm so glad you brought that up because it's true. I think there are some addictions that seem to be more socially acceptable,
Right.
but they are destructive. They are destructive.
They
And more than likely,
and they have the same impact on our body.
the same impact, and then more than likely, whatever's driving those behaviors, there's some similarities there too.
Just a quick interruption.
What up? This is Ethan from the Nonchalant Perfectionist podcast. And truth be told, I'm also a proud member of the Podcast Connection Network. Yeah, that's right. Alongside this fantastic show that you're currently listening to, this network offers a ton of other incredible content creators just like your boy. So if you're looking for more shows to add to your queue, check out the link in the description below. You might just discover your next favorite podcast. Huh, baby? Let's hope so.
Okay, now back to the show. 100%. It's the same core issues. And I mean, I've found in all the work and personal experience, if we get down to like the core issue, is abandonment. Not feeling seen, not feeling heard, not feeling valued, and not feeling safe.
Yeah.
And this is one of the things that I absolutely love about what you're talking about, Aruka Ranch, is providing that safe container, which so many have not experienced. I remember being in a very unhealthy relationship, and it was verbally and got physically abusive. And I remember feeling so judged. I remember feeling stuck, and also, dealing with my own trauma and things that I was dealing with my self perfectionism, right? You do feel stuck and you don't know what safe feels like. And when you're in those moments of feeling alone, feeling like nobody understands where to start, I love what you're doing, is because it's like, hey, I see you. This is a lot. This is overwhelming. And it's a lot to try to do by yourself. It's not impossible, but we're here. You don't have to do it by yourself. You're not alone.
Yeah, I love that, which is why I think the community aspect of what we're going to be providing is huge. And helping them to learn how to do relationships, like dealing with conflict, how to receive and give encouragement, giving feedback, receiving feedback, and not taking it as criticism, but realizing that all feedback you receive, you should receive it as something positive because it's going to help you to grow, even though the other person may be saying, it looks like an area of weakness. Let's see if we can work on that. Okay, that's still positive feedback if you want to frame it correctly, because it's going to help you to grow.
Right. Even before we started recording, I said that to you. I was like, hey, I'm working on creating a better podcast for my listeners and my guests. And so please, I value your feedback, because if you tell me, hey, this wasn't a good experience, this didn't feel right, or this was really tough, one, I could say, well, fine. I could take it to heart, take it personal. But what I'm using it is so that I could grow, because it's important for me to grow. And I don't see it as a personal attack, because my mission and my purpose is to grow and learn. And if we can have that mind frame, that's kind of what you're
Yes,
talking about, right?
absolutely. Yeah. And so if you're in a community that's safe and is providing that, and then also, I really believe that the number one need, one of probably the top five for every human being, is we need to feel like we belong. Even though a lot of the relationships that are going to be built at Aruka Ranch aren't necessarily going to be long term, they're going to feel like they're a part of something that's important. It's important to them. It's important to others. Yeah,
Purpose.
they're going to be provided that kind of purpose, working together. There's a sense of belonging. And I really believe that when, AA, the 12-step program, was even launched, many, many years ago, that's part of the reason why it worked, because people were meeting in
That
these
makes
small
sense. Yeah.
communities where they were gaining understanding of one another, helping each other, and so again, this is another part of what will be provided. And then I think you mentioned just, not feeling abandoned, and knowing that, even when people leave the ranch, we're going to be very intentional about making sure that the people that leave the ranch are plugged in with the other companies, ministries that we have connected with, so that we can make sure that they stay plugged in, or they can even come back and revisit and do kind of like some, day-to-day stuff. You don't have to necessarily stay on the ranch. So we want to make sure that, yeah, I mean, because we don't want to, you come and stay with us for a while and then we're just going to wash our hands of, no. Yes.
That's huge. Well, that's a lot of programs do that. It's like, okay, you've completed, you've graduated, here you go. And it's like, okay, that's awesome. I got this. And then it's like, oh crap, what do I do now?
Yeah, now what? Yeah.
Now
And so
what?
we hope to be able to provide a now what, depending on where people are going back to, and helping them transition and get them plugged into, some other places where they could continue on, or they come back, one or the other.
That's beautiful. So one thing I just want to kind of go back to that I felt was really important. We are talking about the nutrition, we're talking about pH, and we're talking about neuroplasticity. We're talking about the brain and how that affects. And I think it's so important because when I was beginning this journey, I was like, why can't I just get this stuff? Like, even thinking about it now, I feel I can feel the emotion come up. Right. And you feel so frustrated and lost and confused. Like you said, that fog. And I wish that I would have known about the nutrition side of it and how that affects our brain and our body earlier on, because it was great that I got information. I was like gobbling it up because I wanted to learn, but it wasn't until I really changed that nutrition and allowed my brain to be able to comprehend and open up and change did I see those big changes.
Yes. And I wholeheartedly agree with that, which is why this has got to be a key piece to the puzzle. And it's a big part that's been missing, I believe, overall. And so I think it's time for a change. And hopefully when people come and they get, the success, this will grow, and maybe Aruka ranches will, pop up all over the world. That would be great. I would love to see that.
I am speaking that into existence. Yes. 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 That will happen.
Thank you. Thank you.
It
Yes,
is.
it's so needed. Oh, so I mean, part of, coming into the ranch, you'll be evaluated, but overall, we want people to be on a nutritional plan. We're going to have organic gardening. There'll even be animals on the property, because I do believe that one of the ways that many people will be able to not only take responsibility for this life, this animal or whatever, but it's about receiving and giving love. Talking about root cause recovery, I mean, for some individuals, they've never really attached. They came from such a broken background that they have never fully allowed themselves to receive love. And what better way to receive that from an animal that's going to love you unconditionally and trust you? And then you reciprocate that by caring for it on a regular basis. So that's all part of the plan too. So those animals will be there, and every person we're going to look at as a unique person.
Mhm.
So what works for you, Amber, may not necessarily work for me. So therefore, we are going to work with that individual and see what's going to be best for them.
That's huge.
And that's the path we will take. They're going to own, yeah, they need to own their recovery. There's too many places right now that I'm aware of people go, and it's so controlled. Okay. And everybody's doing the same thing. Okay, you have to do this, 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 and this. And if
Right.
you don't, okay, just like we were saying, the medical model of thing. All right, well, okay, you're going to go into detox and we'll put you on all
Right.
these medications. Well, what if I don't want to take
Right,
medication?
those options.
What if I want to try
Mhm.
something different? Well, no, that's not an
Right.
option. Well, you're going to have to go someplace else. Okay, right? So we want to meet people where they are, help them to come up with a plan with what we're going to provide. Let's see what happens. And I believe it's going to be successful. They will experience freedom and healing.
Lillian, what you said about love, it like struck a chord because it's been a topic that has come up so much, especially in reconnecting after trauma. Is that what in the world is love? And most people who have experienced trauma, love equals pain. And so providing this new emotional experience, a new corrective emotional experience of what love is. And I love that you bring nature and the animals into that because that is a reciprocal love that is safe and a beautiful way to learn. Even gardening, giving back, feeling that reciprocity, right?
Yes.
And I think that that's so important because we tell people, okay, love, receive love, but when they've never experienced safe love, that can be such a deterrent. Is I don't want love. Love is scary. Love is painful. And so redefining what love means
Right.
for them is so huge. And I find that I had to do that. Most of my listeners are in that process of what in the world is love? That's so huge.
Yeah, it really is. And I work with women here in Southwest Florida as well that come out of human trafficking. And some of these women were trafficked from the time they were like 2 years old, toddlers. Sometimes they were trafficked by a parent, a family member that was supposed to protect them, love them, nurture them, be trustworthy. So think about that. You think they're going to be quick to trust? Do they even know what love is? Like you said, love equals pain. So this provides a safe setting for them to begin to let their guard down, to begin to trust, no matter who you are, whether it comes from the most traumatic, horrendous situations in your past, or something that just came from a dysfunctional family where they weren't capable of loving you well. They
Right.
loved you, but they just didn't love you well. But the damage is still done. Not that we're trying to find anybody to blame here. We're trying to gain understanding. And with that understanding, now we can begin to move forward so that you can grow and heal and become, right, whole. So the animals are critical. Getting out there in nature, gardening, and then the nutritional aspects, working on the brain, detoxification that's going to help them overall. It's all working, it will all work together, thinking, because we've been at this, my husband and I, for quite some time, but we'll do certain parts of this with different people that we're working with. And see, the beauty of this is now being able to do it all at the same time.
That's so huge. And you said something, trust. And I think this ties back into that individualized plan that you were talking about, which I feel like is overlooked so much, especially in our Western medical model, right? In our culture, everything is very blanket, one size fits all type thing. This also plays into the fact that nobody ever feels seen, heard, or valued, is because, do you hear what I'm saying? I don't want to try this, but you have to try this. This is your only option, or go somewhere else. And it's exhausting, especially when you're in the middle of, you don't trust anybody. You're lost. You're scared. You're alone. Really, that trust, you don't know what to trust. And you're trusting doctors, you're trusting counselors, you're trusting therapists, right? And when you're trusting these people and you don't feel seen and heard, it leaves you feeling even more confused and lost and alone. And so that individualized plan is saying, hey, I see you. I see this might not be working for you, and you matter. Your story matters. What you went through matters.
Yes, exactly right. And the ownership part of this is huge too. So you matter. We see you. We care about what works, what doesn't work. And then as you own part of this process,
Yes.
you get to pick and choose. Again, they feel empowered, where many people, going back to root cause recovery, many never had the freedom to choose.
Oh, that's huge. Which leads back into trust, is they don't trust themselves.
Right. They don't.
That's huge.
Yeah.
And this kind of all goes back to the nutrition also. It's not the whole thing, but it does play a part. We're talking about so many things here. We're talking about, validation. We're talking about responsibilities, self-awareness, emotional intelligence. We're talking about safety. We're talking about connection, community, and we're talking about nutrition, because they all work together. They all work together. And when our nutrition is off, when we don't have those nutrients that our body needs to create the energy and to do the things that we're asking it to do, because it takes energy to heal and to change
It sure
our
does.
our habits and things like that. It
Yes.
takes energy. And so when our body doesn't have that, we actually are not able to do that. And being able to trust ourselves, being able to learn how to connect, it takes vulnerability and it takes courage, and that takes energy to be able to do that.
Yes. And so if you're not taking care of your physical health and well-being, then it's going to hinder your process. That's it. Like I said earlier, this kind of thing is coming out of frustration. So I had been counseling people for many years. And then I decided, well, my husband and I, we started our own health journey, and, reaping the benefits of that, and then just learning so much, and then getting my credentials. I'm like, no wonder, they're still stuck. No wonder I can only get them so far in the process, because there's so much more that has to be done. So that's when I started incorporating, okay, let's do like a hair analysis or get some blood work, and how are your vitamin D levels? And so looking at supplementation, and then, okay, are you walking at least? Are you doing something physical? The antidepressants that is the least used is exercise. If you exercise, there are so many people that could be off of antidepressants and anti-anxiety meds, because it does the same thing to the brain that these chemicals do. So let's get off the chemicals and let's find a more natural approach, and something that you can sustain, which, by the way, if you're on antidepressants, they only work for so long. And then all of a sudden they have to start tweaking
Right.
them. Again, I was talking to one of my clients about this the other day. I don't care if it's ADD meds, bipolar medication. your body builds up this tolerance, and then they keep bumping up, bumping up, bumping up. Now you're on the maximum dose. Okay, well, we're going to have to add another medication to that, or maybe we're going to have to switch your medication. And, back in the day, same thing with high blood pressure, cholesterol issues. If you went to the doctor, diabetes, okay? If you went to the doctor, they would say, okay, what are you doing? Are you working out? How's your, what's your food plan? What's happening with all of that? And then they would encourage you to change your lifestyle so that you could eradicate the blood pressure issue, so that you could bring your cholesterol levels down naturally, so that you could reverse diabetes. You can reverse diabetes too. I've helped people do it.
Well, and I think this goes back, it has to be tangible. It has to be repeatable. And this is what I help my clients with is I call it baby steps. You make it fun and it will get done.
Yes.
You have to make it repeatable and fun. Otherwise, we're not going to do it. And so when somebody tells me, hey, you have to work out for an hour every day, that's going to help you with your depression. I'm like, yeah, that's not going to happen. But if you say, hey, if you go outside, put your feet in the grass for 5 minutes a day, I'm like, I could probably do that. And it's baby stepping, right? And I think that this is where that individualized plan, what can you do right now? What is tangible?
Yes.
What can you do today instead of this blanket?
I agree.
You were talking about long-term. And I truly believe that, Eastern medicine is more long-term and Western medicine is short-term. I think that we need them both. They're both very important. But I think somewhere along the lines, we flip those and people are trying to use Western as a long-term. And this is where that root healing comes in, is that, hey, we want long-term healing that isn't going to be doing us more harm in the future than good.
Right.
And so that's really what we're talking about here. And you were talking about blood tests, and I would love to talk to you more about that because something that I do with my clients is an IgG test, which is a delayed food allergy test. I think that this is so huge because it causes a lot of that inflammation. We don't talk about delayed food allergies and what that does. We talk about IgE, which is more of like the anaphylactic, you eat peanuts and your throat swells up, but we don't talk about the delayed food allergies symptoms, from inflammation to ear infections to psoriasis to chronic fatigue. I love to use kale as an example because kale in its natural state is very, very alkaline, very good for you. But if your body sees it as a pathogen, your immune system will actually attack that.
Right.
And so if you are consuming these foods that your body sees as a pathogen, your immune system is being taken away from fighting disease, from fighting stress, and is now attacking kale and broccoli or, gluten or whatever. And so when we are overloaded with that, that's why it's one of the baselines I start with all of my clients is because first, why guess when we can know? There is a very easy test to take, a simple blood test that gives you 184 foods and herbs that is you, because everybody is different. And I think that this is so important. Back to that individualized plan is, and in fact, I can't get this at the doctor. They won't give it, which is one of the reasons I started my business.
Good.
Is because I said, this is so important because we're missing this. And why is this not being provided? That if we're talking about preventative maintenance, right? Preventative maintenance is starting there. Like, how do we help people before we even get there?
Yeah.
But that's a whole other podcast.
Yeah, that's right up my alley, though. And that's part of identifying the problem so you can get to a solution. So what's really going on here physically, and then also the other things that we were talking about, the trauma and the underlying issues, the beliefs that are there that have to be changed. There's so much. So let's work towards identifying the genuine problem and not trying to fight a symptom. The symptom is just to help us to know that there's a problem. But let's not focus on that as much as what is driving this whole thing. Let's pick that apart. Now let's come up with a strategy and a plan of action so that you can get well. And I'm all about the baby steps too. Mike and I, when we first started our health journey, that's exactly what we did. We started learning, And we started implementing what we were learning. And over the course of, like, I would say it took a year. And by the end of the year, our entire lifestyle had been turned right side up. And so we wrote a book. It's called Fit and Faith. And in there, it's actually, there is a baby step program in there. And so we focus on different categories of things. Okay, let's start here. So detoxification, or let's start here and let's work on, the main things, the main staples that you're consuming. And yeah, the testing is also, a part of that. It's like, let's figure out what's really going on with your body and maybe some things that need to be eliminated or that are the big no-nos right now. But, one baby step at a time. And we usually tell people, okay, you get something down. Now, they used to say, it takes 21 days to create a new habit. It takes much longer than that, by the way. The new research says it's more like 60 days.
Right.
But when you're doing this kind of plan, I think you can do, change a couple of things for a couple of weeks. Okay. Once you get that down, it's like, okay, take a deep breath. All right, I think I've got this. All right, let's add another thing or take away another thing. It works. And then it's not as overwhelming to people either when you're working with them. If you tell them flat out, okay, you're going to have to stop this, and this. We're going to do this. Because I also work at a free pain clinic. A lot of these individuals are getting diagnosed with chronic inflammatory disease, which is coming from mold disorders, especially here in Florida. And I'll tell you, I mean, it's quite overwhelming when these patients hear what they have to do to get well. So usually I end up with them in my office after they've seen the doctor, they've got the diagnosis, and now okay. I mean, they're in tears. Seriously, some of them are in tears. So let's just take a step back and let's figure out the things that you can tackle just over this next week. So let's do that. People come to Aruka Ranch. We're not going to tell them, okay, now some people like radical change. I'm the kind of person, I love a challenge. Give me a challenge and I'm all in. I'll give it 100% because I just like challenges. But the majority of people are not like me. It's one baby step at a time. So we're going to teach them how to take those baby steps. And not only that, we're not just going to talk about it. We're going to teach you how to cook. We're going to teach you how to eat differently. We're going to teach you the difference between supplements you need and supplements you don't need. And you need supplements because you could eat as clean as possible and follow everything right. And you're not going to get what you need out of the food because the food is deficient.
100%.
So you need vitamins and minerals.
100%. We have to bridge that gap.
Yeah. So that's the other thing. We're going to bridge the gap. Let's bridge the gap.
So I want to go back to, because I know so many of my listeners are in those beginning stages, and all of this can feel so overwhelming, talking about, nutrients and all of this stuff. When you were starting your journey, what did you feel? And what really was a pivotal moment for you that really helped? Because I know so many are struggling right now. It does feel overwhelming.
I think for me, the thing that got me into recovery, and that first step in, was coming to realize that I hated myself. I hated the person that I had become. I didn't like my life overall. Like, what is this? Going back to what we were talking about earlier about realizing choices, I was in a place of I was hurting. And I didn't really even know the extent of that pain until, after years of, hurting people with my addiction and doing some of the just stupidest things that I never thought I would ever do. And coming to that realization that, like, I don't want to live like this anymore. And that led to a suicide attempt, by the way. But through that suicide attempt, it led me to recovery because I realized it wasn't that I wanted to die. I just didn't want to hurt anymore. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to do it. That's when I reached out. That was the pivotal change right there. And after that, when I started realizing that there were other options and I started making those changes, and then reaping the benefits, I was like, okay, I want more. I want more. I know there's more and pursuing more. I really believe, God got a hold of me. That's really what happened, because I think that's where I began to realize that there was a purpose for